Okay. First of all, this is Rabbi Safran's last shiur for a few weeks, so we wish him well in a colder climate. We look forward to having him back in Mitzvah Shem after the summer. There are two Gemaras. As we're making our journey through Birchaos HaShachar, have to keep in mind there are two main Gemaras that speak about Birchaos HaShachar. We have the Gemara Menachos we saw together during the first year on Mem Gimel Amud Beis, and we have a Gemara in Birchaos on Daf Samach. The Gemara Menachos is the Brisa from Reb Meir. Reb Meir says, "Chayev adam levarich shlosh brachos b'chol yom ve'elu hein." These are the three brachos that you're obligated to say every day. Number one, Sha'asani Yisro. Thank you, Hashem, for making me a Yid. Number two, Shelo Asani Isha. Thank you, Hashem, for not making me an Isha. And then number three is Shelo Asani Bor. And the Gemara concludes that number three is actually Shelo Asani Eved. So we have three brachos. Halacha l'maisa, the Gemara is telling us, Chayev adam levarich shlosh brachos elu b'chol yom, she'asani Yisrael, shelo asani eved, shelo asani isha. Then we have a Gemara in Birchaos. The Gemara in Birchaos, that's where we have the bracha we spoke about last week. Ki shama tol tarnagola lema baruch asher nosan l'sech v'vina l'havchin bein yom v'vein layla. The time when we say asher nosan l'sech v'vina is when you hear the kol tarnagol. And then when you open your eyes, you say the bracha pakeach ivrim. And then when you stretch, you say matir asurim. And then when you get dressed, you say the bracha of malbish arumim. When you stand up, you say zokiv kafufim. So all the other brachos that we have for Birchaos HaShachar are mentioned here in the Gemara in Birchaos and Daf Samach. What's interesting is that we take the three brachos in Menachos and we insert them right into the middle of the list of brachos, right, in the Gemara in Birchaos. We're going with the Gemara in Birchaos that the first bracha is Asher Nasan L'Sech Vivina, but then we don't go straight to Pokeach Ivrim. We insert before Pokeach Ivrim the three brachos of the language of the Gemara, Sha'asani Yisrael, Shelo Asani Goy, Shelo Asani Eved, Shelo Asani Isha. So where does that come from, and how do we know that these three brachos in Menachos go right after the bracha of Shenasan L'Sech Vivina? Well, very basic question. Now I do want to point out one thing. The language in the Gemara in Birchaos is Sha'asani Yisrael. Very positive, very focused on the fact that we are Yidden. Thank you, Hashem, Sha'asani Yisrael. However, if you look back at the old printing of the Talmud, and you look in the Tosefta and the Yerushalmi, and in all of the Rishonim, the assumed text in the Gemara is not Sha'asani Yisrael, but rather Shelo Asani Goy. So how do we have Sha'asani Yisrael in our Gemaras? The censor. Mishum the censor. Right? You could imagine if you're living amongst Akum and you're making a bracha, or your religious text says, you shall make a bracha, thank you Hashem, Shelo Asani Akum, that might engender bad feelings. So in society where there was persecution and anti-Semitism, they felt the need to change it for those who might be looking on and not understanding what's actually happening here. And that's why in the text of the Gemara that we have, it's Sha'asani Yisrael. But in reality, it's clear the intent of the bracha is Shelo Asani Goy. And that's going to be the main part of our discussion today. Not delving in necessarily to the bracha Shelo Asani Goy, Shelo Asani Eved, Shelo Asani Isha, or Sha'asani Kirtzono that women say, but more focused on why the negative Shelo Asani. Right? Why doesn't a man say in the morning, like the nusach that we have, that they changed to make it sound better? It does sound better. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Hashem she'asani ben chorin. Thank you for making me a free man. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'asani ish. Right? Wouldn't that be better? Everything in the positive. Okay, so let's take one step at a time. First question is, why do we insert these three brachos right after the bracha b'sher nasan l'sech vivina, before all the other morning blessings? So Rav Schwab, in his Sefer on Tefillah, he quotes from Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, who has a beautiful idea. Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch explained that the very first bracha, Asher nasan l'sech vivina l'havchin vein yom uvein laila, you've implanted within our heart the intuitive knowledge to discern between good and bad, truth and sheker. Just like the tarnagol, where it's instinctual. What does the tarnagol do with that knowledge? With that mitzias, that understanding? L'havchin ben yom uvein laila, sheyachriz v'yodia l'chol brios. It announces to all of humanity, Rabbi Light HaShachar has come. So says Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, Kein nasan HaKadosh Baruch Hu kishrun miyuchad l'chol echad mibruyov l'malos l'kayim tafkidu hamiyuchad. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given each one of us an understanding that's ingrained in the neshama of what exactly it is that I need to be doing with my life. Right? The Gra famously says in his parish in Mishlei that in the olden days when we had Nevi'im, life was much simpler. Go to the Navi and ask, what's my tafkid? What's my mission in this world? And he would help guide you. However, we lost that about 2,400 years ago. So ever since then, writes the Gra, we have Ruach HaKodesh. Each one of us has Ruach HaKodesh. Now, don't take that to the bank. Right? Always good to ask Eitzah and Hadracha from those who know more than we do to gain the deeper Das Torah. But there is a reality of a Ruach HaKodesh within each one of us. We're able to get past all of the barriers and discover what is my truth, what is my mission. And that's all included in the bracha, l'havchin ben yom uvein laila. So says Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, as Yidden, our special ability as a nation and as individuals within that nation, the goal is not just to understand for ourselves, right? Im lamata Torah harbe al tachsich la'atzmecha. Some understand that Mishnah to mean if you've learned a lot of Torah, don't keep it for yourself. Al tachsik tova la'atzmecha, but share it with the world. Ki lekach notzarta. You were created with this deeper understanding to be able to uplift humanity. So says Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, the goal of every Yid is not just l'havchin ben yom uvein laila, but it's to the best of our abilities to share that with others. Who are those others? Obviously, Achenu Beis Yisrael. We want to make sure that our mishpacha, we can be makarev them closer to Torah, tachas kanfei shechina. And indirectly, right, although we don't go out proactively and try to convert others to Yiddishkeit, but indirectly, the goal is to be an or l'goyim, to be a light unto the nations, to be a source of inspiration of what it means to live with the truth and an ehrlichkeit and the moral clarity. The Sforno says in the pasuk Mamleches Kohanim, right? What does it mean to be a nation of priests? Mamleches Kohanim means we're a nation of teachers. The language of the Sforno is that the obligation of Klal Yisrael is lahavin ulahoros lechol min hanoshi, to understand godliness, ulahoros lechol min hanoshi, and to share that truth with others, to all of humanity. So says Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, that's why right after we say Asher nosan l'sech vivina l'havchin ben yom uvein laila, you've given us that clarity, and you've given us as Klal Yisrael and individuals of Klal Yisrael a deeper clarity of truth, and we know that we want to share that with those around us, then the very next bracha is what the Gemara in Menachos speaks about. Shelo asani goy, shelo asani eved, shelo asani isha. Those are all identifying who I am, but who I'm not, and who I am, and therefore clarifying what am I using these kochos for. Then we get to Pokeach Ivrim, Malbish Rumim, etc. Azoi state from Reb Shamshon Hirsch. Isn't that beautiful? Shamshon Hirsch? Yeah? Don't knock over the camera. If you fall asleep during the shiur, you're going to mamish knock over the camera. Maybe it does and you didn't understand it.
You're right.
Okay. What do you want to say?
No, it doesn't explain why it shall go asani part.
No, it doesn't answer that question.
Yeah,
100%, right. But it answers the question of the placement. We said there's two separate questions. Yes. Regarding the placement, we have this beautiful idea from Shimon Schwab, B'Shem, of Shamshon Hirsch. Now let's get to the focus on the negative. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Just looking for the validation. It's a beautiful idea. Yes. Okay. So why do we focus on the negative? The Bach in Orach Chaim Memvav, he addresses the question. V'yesh makshin. Amai lo tiknu levarich shersani Yisrael kechol shar brachos sheniskonu al hachesed she'asa b'poal. All the other brachos we have, we're thanking Hashem for the chesed that you did for me. Pokeach, Ivrim, Malbish, Rumim, etc. Why, when it comes to identifying ourselves and our mission, is it in the negative? Mefarshim, so says the Bach, many explain based on the Gemara in Eruvin. The famous Gemara in Eruvin speaks about a long debate between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Was it better for us to have been created or not? And after many years of machlokus and discussion, they concluded, Noach lo la'adam shelo nivra misha nivra. Better that you were never created. Don't leave now, otherwise life will be depressing.
Well, we're focusing on the negative,
Okay. So based on that Gemara, says the Bach, we say Shelo asani goy, Shelo asani eved, because the intent is, listen, better I'm not here at all. I'm not going to say thank you, She'asani Yisrael. Better I'm not here. Right? I'd rather not be in the 95 right now. I'd rather be at home. But if I have to be in the 95, you know what, Baruch Hashem, at least I'm not in that lane. Right? So I say, Shelo asani goy, Shelo asani eved, because the connotation is, I'm not thanking you for my overall existence, because Noach lo shelo nivra. Better I was never created. But at least now that I'm here, okay, thank you for not making me a goy. Okay, isn't that inspiring? No. We're going to analyze this b'tuv tam b'das. No questions yet. We're going to analyze this. Okay. The Bach goes on to say, okay, listen, nohu l'drasha. It's a nice drasha, but I don't think you need it. There's a very simple technical answer that I think makes more sense, which is, if you were to make the initial bracha of She'asani Yisrael, then you wouldn't be able to go on and make the bracha Shelo asani eved, Shelo asani isha. Because She'asani Yisrael is basically including the fact that I'm not an eved and I'm not an isha. Because maybe the indication or the connotation would be, I'm a Yisrael, namely I'm a Ben Chorin, and I'm a Yisrael, I'm an Ish. Okay, so what? If I would have made the bracha of She'asani Yisrael, that I couldn't make the other brachos, why is that a bad thing?
You could be a female Yisrael.
What's that?
You could be a female Yisrael.
So you could be a female Yisrael. Those exist as well, right? About half of the nation. Huh? You could still be an enslaved Yisrael and still be a Yisrael. Yes, we have a notion of Evet Ivri. Okay, these are all...
And you could also change the order.
Okay. But, so says the Bach like this. He says, we wanted to be able to say as many brachos as possible, and this gets back into our first discussion. What is the whole point of making brachos, Bechlal, and Birchaos HaShachar? So we saw from the Kuzari, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's way of helping us appreciate every aspect of life. We saw from the Yesod V'Shorish Havoda that every one of these brachos is to help us not just feel gratitude, but to create this ongoing, continuous awareness that I'm living with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything is Hashem. And the Bach says, therefore, right, he doesn't specify Kuzari, Yesod V'Shorish Havoda, but he's working within the framework that we want to say as many brachos as possible. Ein zeh kavanaseinu lekatzer. We don't want to shorten the brachos. Ela laharich b'hodos ulevarich al kol chesed. We want to be able to be mefaret, to specify all the different chaste Hashem. So that's why we couldn't say She'asani Yisrael. So he is bringing more of a technical answer, but he's quoting something that's bringing more of a philosophical answer that we're going to have to explore, because that sounds quite depressing. Question? Yes.
So just say She'asani Ish, then She'asani Koren, and then She'asani Yisrael. Why is it?
Meaning just switch the order. Start off by saying, thank you Hashem, She'asani Ish. Thank you Hashem, She'asani Ben Choron. Thank you Hashem, She'asani Yisrael. Okay, a good kasha. A good kasha. Well, the whole idea of a censor is not what we said, but it's more in the text of the Talmud.
Okay.
Yes. All right. I've told you a story that we had someone who was visiting and wanted to daven, right? Wanted to daven starting with Pesukah de Zimra, and that was back in the day when we said Birchaos HaShachar out loud. And he just, before he went up, he warned me, and I don't say Shelo Asani Isha. I just don't feel comfortable with that bracha. Just want to let you know you're an Orthodox place, So I said, I'm just going to get someone else to say brachos, and you'll take over afterwards, okay? You could start with Baruch Shamar. Anyway, so we have, that was the Bach on the tour. If you take a look now in the Shulchan Aruch, also in Siman Mem Vav, that speaks about these brachos. So the Taz quotes his father-in-law. Who was the father-in-law of the Taz? The Bach. Whenever the Taz says, Mori Chamizal, he's referring to the Bach. So he quotes the Bach who says, if we would have had the text of the bracha, She'asani Yisrael, we would not have been able to say the other two brachos, and we want to have as many brachos as possible. To that, the Taz asks Mrs. Goldstein's question, which is, but what do you mean? If theoretically I could say a bracha that includes more, it's nice you want to say more brachos, but we generally have a halachic concept of bracha she'eino tzricha. So if it's true that She'asani Yisrael really includes Shelo Asani Isha, Shelo Asani Eved, then we should have said that, to be memayit b'brachos. Okay. So he disagrees with his father-in-law. He goes on to say a little bit of a different idea, and this also requires a lot of thought. The Taz says that if theoretically all of those three brachos were said in the positive, there would be a connotation that which I'm coming to exclude is objectively not worthy. If I would have said She'asani Yisrael, then there could be a connotation that there's no place for an Eino Yehudi in this world. I have no reason why it's here. I don't understand. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. By saying Shelo Asani Goy, explains the Taz, what we're really saying is, I understand why we need all of humanity. And I understand and I appreciate how everyone can contribute in their own unique way. But Shelo Asani Goy, I'm grateful that you didn't put me in that category, but you allowed me to be in Klal Yisrael. Shelo Asani Evid, Shelo Asani Isha. Same idea. I'm not discounting those creations. Baruch Hashem, everyone is needed. I'm expressing my Hakaras HaTov for being in this category. Now he does say at the end, and this is going to be a line we'll get back to when we analyze the brach of Shelo Asani Isha, very end of the Taz. Gabi Isha, Havi Metaretz Tvei. Dehutzrich lahazkir sheyesh maila gam bebrias Isha. There's definitely a maila, there's something that women have, and we'll see that men don't. Ela shehu lo nitztarech le'osa maila. But if HaKadosh Baruch Hu created me male, so then I don't need that maila. V'nira li od, masha hanoshim mevarcho she'esani kitzono. And furthermore, it appears to me, the minig that women make the bracha she'esani kitzono, which is interesting, because was that in the Gemara in Brachos or the Gemara in Menachos? It wasn't anywhere. That bracha is not mentioned in Shas. Nonetheless, we paskin, the Mechaber paskins, the Taz is paskening, that women do say the bracha of she'esani kitzono. The bracha zu eino begemara, but nonetheless, because clearly they have a maila, there's something special that women have that men don't, they say the bracha of she'esani kitzono. We, though, who don't need that maila, right, we have a different maila, and we'll get into what that maila is, but pashut pshat, it just means we have opportunities for more mitzvos, so we say Shelo Asani Isha. But the basic idea of the Taz is, by focusing on the negative, there's actually this counterintuitive message that I'm giving. That yes, I understand and I appreciate why we need all humanity. I understand and appreciate why we need both genders. But I'm saying Baruch Hashem for making me not like that, which is also needed, but making me Klal Yisrael. Or making me an Ish and not an Isha.
Why would the same thing apply for a woman to say Shelo Asani Isha? What we're saying is that what we're saying that the depth of the bracha is that there's a place for everything in this world. But thank you for not making me in that group.
So that's a good question. Meaning, why wouldn't women say the bracha Shelo Asani Ish? Because of the censor. No.
It actually makes sense because what we're doing is the negative formulation makes space to mention the other group. Like usually you would just kind of like.
I'll give you a mashal. When we have the pasuk in Parshas Yisro, where Kadosh Baruch Hu says, "You're going to be my am sagula mikol amim," my special treasured nation amongst all the nations of the world. The Sforno over there says the intent of the pasuk is that Kadosh Baruch Hu is telling Klal Yisrael, even though all of humanity is chaviv etzli, is beloved to me, nonetheless, you're an am sagula. There's something special with Klal Yisrael. Why is the Sforno saying that? Meaning, it sounds very, it's politically correct, right? But what's motivating, what's compelling the Sforno to say that when the pasuk says, "You're going to be my am segula mikol amim," that what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying is, I'm really telling you, I love every single human being and every nation on this planet. They're all my creations, but there's something special about Klal Yisrael. How did the Sforno know that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying? Good question. Okay. The answer is, because if you're praising Klal Yisrael by saying, you're going to be my treasured people, mikol ha'amim, from all the other nations of the world. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu's view of kol ha'amim was just a bunch of garbage, right? You're going to be my special treasure more than all of the garbage on the planet. right? Whenever you drive by those little hills in Florida, and you know what's really underneath the grass there, and you could tell because all of the vultures are flying around, and the misa, it smells for like a mile before and after, I'm going to love you more than that hill, right? Not much of a shevach. So says the Sforno when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you're going to be my am segula mikol amim, the fact that there's a comparison means that the ma'isa, the amim are choshev. I love humanity. Every human being is created b'tzelem Elokim, but you're my am segula. And I think the Taz is saying something similar. Shelo asani goy, if the whole thing was just putting down, shelo asani shegitz, shelo asani schwarze, that's obviously not the intent of the bracha, right? You didn't make me a dirty mammal. You didn't make me one of those creatures that are in the bottom of the ocean that lives off the feces of other animals. Thank you, Hashem. Shelo asani goy means that there's a chashivas to goy. And shelo asani goy, you didn't even make me that. You made me Klal Yisrael. Shelo asani isha, there's a chashivas to isha. They might have a maila that we don't have. And we'll discuss that when we get to that bracha. Shelo asani eved, right? That's going to be an interesting thing to discuss, what the maila of an eved is, but I understand there's a place for that. And there could be a rehabilitation within the process of avdus. There's what to gain from that. But shelo asani eved. That's the idea of the Taz. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I just want to get back to what the Bach was mentioning, and others mentioned this as well, because at first glance it's very disturbing. But I think this will give us a deeper appreciation of really all these different ideas lead up to one theme. And again, the goal of these discussions is not just to throw out different ideas, but to hopefully walk away with something realistic to have in mind when saying these brachos. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter in the Or Yisrael quotes this Gemara in Erevin, where the conclusion of that discussion between Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai is, better that a human being was never born. Now that you're here, try your best. What is pshat in that Gemara? What's the greatest proof that it's better that we were created? We were created, right? The greatest proof is if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Kol Yachol and the Meitiv and who loves me more than I love myself, and the Maisa we believe that Olam Chesed Yibaneh, the very creation of existence, is an expression of the ultimate love of the infinite Borei. So obviously, if we're here, that means it's better to be here. So the Gemara is very troubling. Says Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, and one of his Talmidim, Rabbi Naftali Amsterdam, really elaborated on Rabbi Yisrael's view of this Gemara, but you see it alluded to in this one line, very last line of the paragraph from the Or Yisrael. Kamoshai Ritzona Yisbarach Shmo B'Brias Adam Shehu Negid Sichleinu. The Gemara is not talking about any kind of philosophical debate between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Was it better for us to have been created? Because anyone who would stand up and say it's better that we weren't created, you're an apikoros. Right? Heretic. Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, we might paskin more like Beis Hillel than Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai is not an apikoros, right? Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. So says Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the entire debate was lefi sichleinu. Can we understand why it's better for us to be here than to have not been created in the first place? Because ultimately speaking, there is so much that happens in this world that is very difficult to process, very hard to understand. The fact that we have moral obligations and we have Taryag mitzvos means that we have an incredible opportunity for growth and transcendence, but it also means we have so many areas we could mess up and we could fail epically. Is it really worth it? Is the struggle worth it? Is the risk of being nichshol of failing our mission in this world, is it worth being created? That was the entire ongoing debate between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. The conclusion was, Noach lo la'adam shelo nivra. If we had to make that assessment, we would have said, I don't think the risk is worth it. There's too much to lose in this world. Leave the neshama where it is. Don't bring them into Olam Hazeh with all of the challenges of Bechira and the Yetzer. That's what the Gemara means. Daniel, is that a beautiful pshat in the Gemara? It's beautiful.
Does that mean that without being in this world, we would have had the same closeness to Hashem, or we would have given that up?
It sounds like intellectually, logically, what we could make sense out of, we would have said, it's not worth gaining more closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through being placed in this world because we understand the risk. The risk is too much.
Don't we also understand that the good is so many more times greater than the bad?
Yes. This is all part of the discussion. They spoke about it for 2 years, so it's well above the scope of our 36-minute shiur. But Lamaisa, okay, if that's what the Gemara is talking about, and they're not debating some kind of objective philosophical issue, so how does that play into our davening, our tfilos, our brachos? It has everything to do with our tefillah. Because we have a klal gadol when it comes to tefillah, is that we only speak about that which we understand, without getting involved with the sources for that. But tefillah is something that's very personal, and it's an expression of where I am, right? Why is it that if Khalila, somebody is sick, we always daven for their refuah? Maybe the best thing is that they're not going to have a refuah, and that's going to be the Gezar Din of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if that does happen, we're going to say, L'maisa, that was for the best. So what are you davening for? You have no idea what's for the best. And the answer is, because we live in a reality where he needs to have a refuah, and that's what I'm davening for. That's my mitzias. That's my perception. If someone's struggling with parnasa, if someone's struggling with shidduchim, we daven that they should find their zivug. We daven they should have better parnasa. Maybe that's not the best thing for them. That's not my cheshbon. I daven based on what seems to be the best thing at the best time. So if intellectually, if according to the understanding of a human being, we don't really appreciate why we're gaining more from being here in the first place. So that's what the Taz, right, and what the Bach was quoting, that's the idea. Of course it's better to have been created. We're here, Baruch Hashem. But if I can't fully articulate why it's better for me to be here than to have remained in the Shama with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Olam Ha'emes, so then for me to say, Sha'asani Yisrael, Sha'asani Ish, Sha'asani Ben Chorin, that's not really articulating my perspective on life, because I don't understand fully that it was the best thing for me. Sha'asani Yisrael, Sha'asani Ish, Sha'asani Ben Chorin. And I think there's one step deeper. When you ask any second-year base medrash boy, Shmuli, just curious, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create the universe? So, what would your average second-year base medrash boy say? Okay. Well, hopefully they've seen the Mesilas Yesharim, and they would say, Lehonos meziv shechinoso. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us, Lehonos meziv shechinoso, to have this pleasure, the pleasure of the relationship with Hashem. Oh, or they might quote, if they're learned, the Mishnah and Sanhedrin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the whole universe for me, as a matana, right? As a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want to share with you, though, what Reb Chaim Friedlander says. Says Reb Chaim Friedlander, this is a footnote in one of the volumes of the Sifsei Chaim. He says, Kishe'onu oskim b'she'ele le'ezit tzarech u'matorah bora es habriya. Whenever we have a discussion as to why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create the world, Ein ha'she'ela al kavanas hakadosh baruch hu b'bria. We're not really trying to analyze the intention of Hashem in creation. Because it is absolutely impossible for any of us who are stuck within the pages of the novel to have any insight beyond the book. We can't go there. So if someone asks, why did God create the entirety of the universe and all of the billions and billions of olomos and malachim? The real answer is, I have no clue. I have no idea. Lo machshavosai k'machshavoseichem lo darcheichem darachai. Baruch Hu says, you're not going to climb into my mind. What we're talking about is, within the misgeret, within the context of our reality, what we can see, what we know from Masorah, is there are certain elements of truth. So we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need anything. We're not here because he was lonely or because he needed a boost to his self-esteem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu obviously created us as a matana, as a madaschinam, as chesed, as ava. So we could say those words. But to answer the entirety of why and how, we have no clue. And I think that plays into what Rabbi Yisrael is saying and what the Bach is saying, is that we approach these brachos with a real sense of humility. I don't claim to know why or how or why it's beneficial. Sh'asani Yisrael, Sh'asani Ish, Sh'asani Ben Chorin. We approach it with a sense of incredible gratitude, but also measured with a real feeling of anava. I don't claim to understand anything. Baruch Hashem, I appreciate everything that's here. Baruch Hashem, I'm not an Eved. And I have more capacity, I have more opportunity. Baruch Hashem, a man says, I'm not an Isha. I have more mitzvahs to do. Okay, beautiful. I want to share one last thing, and then we're going to see how does this all fit into the brachos. Okay. The last thing here is from the Pri Tzaddik, Reb Tzadok HaKohen, Schuso Yoged Aleinu. He says that he's quoting from Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Whenever the Pri Tzaddik says Rabbeinu HaKadosh, you know who he's referring to? I have no idea. I tried looking around a little bit, I'm not sure. But obviously he was someone who was very holy, if the Pri Tzaddik is referring to him as Rabbeinu HaKadosh. He says that the Rabbeinu HaKadosh asked me, or he presented the question, why is it that Kohanim don't make a bracha, Sh'asani Kohen? Now, Kohen's not going to make a bracha, Shelo Asani Yisrael, because L'maisa, he says at the end of the piece, you are a Yisrael. It's not even true to say Shelo Asani Yisrael. Yisrael doesn't just mean an Israelite versus a Kohen, it means you're a Yid. So you can't say Shelo Asani Yisrael, and even saying those words would be, just a nitshain. Not appropriate. Okay, but said the bracha of Sh'asani Kohen. So Reb Tzaddik said, I shared with Rabbeinu HaKadosh the following answer, and he liked it. He said, I wanted to suggest, why is it that we don't make the bracha Sh'asani Yisrael? The answer is because it's true, I was created a Yid, but I have Bechira. I might not live up to all of the expectations and the demands of what it means to be a Yid. Why is it I don't say Sh'asani Ben Chorin in contrast to an Eved? Same idea. I might not live up to all of the expectations of a Ben Chorin, all of my opportunities that I have because I'm free. And when we say Eved in the bracha, we're referring to really Eved Kanani. And Eved Kanani we know has less mitzvos. I may not live up to be Mekayim all of those mitzvos that I have over an Eved. Why don't I say Sh'asani Ish? For the same reason, says Reb Tzadok. I might not live up to the expectations of really being a man. in the sense of coming through with all of those added chiyuvim. And that's why there's no bracha of She'asani Kohen. Because, in the language of Reb Tzadok, Lo shayach levarich, 2 lines from the bottom, Lo shayach levarich She'asani Kohen, Ki gam kein ha-bechira b'yodo, lahachnis ha-kedusha b'libo. Every Kohen has that bechira. Are they able, ready, and willing to bring that kedusha into their hearts? V'gam tzarich shelo lechalel es kahunaso. And they also have the obligation of not to profane their kahuna. There are ways of losing that status. So Rav Tzadok is saying a different approach. We'll see, though, how they're all touching on a very similar theme. I don't say what the censor had in the text of the Gemara. Thank you, Hashem, She'asani Yisrael. Because yes, I was made a Yid, but it's up to me whether I live up to those expectations. And therefore I could say, Shelo Asani Goy. Shelo Asani Goy. And therefore I have more opportunity, and we'll have to see, what do I do with that? Hakol b'dei Shemayim chutz miyirah Shemayim. It's up to you. I don't say She'asani ben Choron. We'll see if you live up to the real madreg of a ben Choron. She'asani ish. How do we know you're going to fulfill all the mitzvos and added chiyuvim of a man? What's the tzad hashava? Right? We have many ideas here. We had one technical answer of the Bach, but within the realm of the philosophical tirutzim as to why do we focus on the negative, we had the approach of what the Bach quotes as well, based on that Gemara, that really better, that we should not have been created, meaning we don't understand why it's better to have been created. We had the approach of the Taz, where by saying Shelo Asani Goy, I'm still giving credence to the necessity of having all humanity. And then we have this idea from the Pri Tzaddik, where how could I say She'asani Yisrael? I might not live up to that mandate. What's the tzad hashava? What's the theme of all of these ideas? So it sounds to me that there's this very beautiful combination of pleasure, of gratitude, but not gaiva. Not a sense of, here am I'm over here and you're over here, and thank you for not making me like that. It's almost to the contrary. I don't fully understand why anything exists. I know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything is an expression of your love, but there's so much that I'll never understand. I don't fully understand why it's not too much of a risk to even be in this world. But I know this is what's best for me, and I know you've given me the capacity to maximize my relationship with you. So I say, Shelo Asani Goy, thank you for not making me an akum and giving me the opportunity to living life as a yid. Shelo Asani Eved, thank you for not making me an Eved and giving me all of the opportunities of having more mitzvos and cherus. Shelo Asani Isha, thank you for not making me an Isha, giving me more opportunities and more mitzvos. With that mindset, yes, we're focusing on the negative, but it's very much almost creating, right? It's counterintuitive, but by focusing on the negative, it's only creating more of a positive. I'm saying everything in this world is a bracha. Everything in this world has its place. Steht in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, al tehi vaz l'chol adam, al tehi maflig l'chol davar. She'ein l'cha adam, she'ein lo shah, ve'ein l'cha davar, she'ein lo makom. Don't ever be mevaza anything, because everything has its place. Every aspect of humanity and everything in the world. Now, we're going to analyze the Mirz Hashem. We'll have one share going through, I think, these 3 brachos, right? Shelo Asani Goy, Shelo Asani Eved, Shelo Asani Isha. But just the appreciation of when we focus on the negative, we're actually able to bring out more of a positive, more an appreciation of everything else that's also there, that I may not be that, but I appreciate its existence. And I thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for the opportunity of becoming a Yisrael. Shkoyach.
whatever bracha